I'm Sophie Berger, and this is my research on rape myth acceptance and blame attribution for sexual assault victims based on gender and sexuality. The main finding of this research was that there's a positive correlation between rape myth acceptance and blame. So, an American is sexually assaulted every 68 seconds. This has become an epidemic. So with that being said, people believe in rape myths, which are assumptions and beliefs about rape, the victims, and the perpetrators to justify sexual assault. These are usually for female victims, but there are also some for male victims as well. Previous research has shown that male victims receive less sympathy for their assault and that members of the LGBTQIA+ community will also receive more blame. This study was seeking to understand how one's rape myth acceptance will impact the blame given to sexual assault victims and examine how a victim's gender and sexuality may also impact the blame they are given. It was hypothesized that there would be a positive correlation between rape myth acceptance and blame. It was also hypothesized that for those who deviate from the straight female victim will receive more blame. The third hypothesis was that there would be an interaction between rape myth acceptance and victim identity on blame, so that non-conforming identities would affect blame for those with high rape myth acceptance scores, but not for those with low acceptance scores. And then there was an exploratory hypothesis looking at all of the conditions and their differences in blame. This study had two samples. One were undergraduate students from a small liberal arts university, and the second sample were undergraduate students that were recruited using Prolific. All participants completed the Illinois Rape Myth Acceptance Short Form Scale that was integrated with other scales that were not analyzed. They were then randomly assigned to one of the four conditions: straight male, gay male, straight female, and gay female. They each then read a vignette, so they all read a car theft, burglary, and sexual assault vignette, and after each one of those, they completed a blame attribution scale and rated the likelihood to report the crime to the police and the individual's boss. So the first finding was that there was a positive correlation between rape myth acceptance and blame for both of these samples. That means as one's rape myth acceptance scores are higher, the more blame they may attribute a victim. And then for the second hypothesis, it was found that there was not a significant effect of the condition that a participant was in on the blame attributed for both of those samples. So gender and sexuality did not have an effect on blame. For the third hypothesis, which stated that there would be an interaction between rape myth acceptance and victim identity on blame, for both samples, there was a significant main effect for rape myth acceptance on the blame of the victim, but there was not a significant difference found for the non-conforming identities on the blame of the victim. So again, the identity of one's victim did not impact the blame. And lastly, for that exploratory hypothesis, for both of the samples, again, there was not a significant difference found for the conditions on the blame of the victim, so gender and sexuality didn't change the blame. But there was a significant main effect of rape myth acceptance on the blame of the victim for both samples. And then after running a Bonferroni post hoc test, it was revealed that there was a non-significant difference between those differences found earlier. So to conclude, it was found that rape myth acceptance and blame are positively correlated, and that there was no effect of gender or sexuality on the blame of victims. These results deviate from future findings, but could be because the rape myth acceptance scores and blame scores are both relatively low throughout both of the samples. There's also a possibility of social desirability bias of the respondents kind of choosing to answer in a way that they think others would want them to answer. So future research should examine the differences in rape myth acceptance and blame across generations, as well as looking at a wider range of gender and sexuality scope, specifically trans and non-binary victims. But this research is really imperative in creating a more supportive society for sexual assault victims and combating rape myths that cause victims to be blamed for their assaults. That's all. Thank you.